Hi. Um, Welcome to the Park and Recreational Advisory Board for Monday, February 10th, 2025. The City of Gladstone is abiding by guidelines set forth in House Bill 2560, which requires the governing body of the public body, to the extent reasonably possible, to make all meetings accessible remotely through technological means and provide opportunity for members of general public to remotely submit oral and written testimony during meetings to the extent in-person oral and written testimony is allowed. Therefore, this meeting will be open to the public, both in person and virtually using the Zoom platform. Kristen, if you could call the roll, please.
Kate Cornelius.
Here.
Eric Butler.
Here.
Nancy Turner.
Present.
Justice Mills.
Present.
And we have absent Bruce Hildreth and Kim Agramson.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and should we allow the speaker go ahead? We need to go ahead and do the election, correct?
Yeah, let's elect a chair and vice chair, and then if you'd like to do public comments, you can.
Okay. So tonight, because it's the first meeting in January, we need to elect a new chairman and vice chair for the next year. So if someone has nominations, that would be great we can start with president.
I nominate Nancy to be our chairwoman again.
Are there any other nominations? Crickets. Okay, so all those, would you take do we have a motion, please?
I was going to say we need a motion.
I will make the motion.
I will second.
Okay, and then Kristen, if you'll read the roll, please.
Kate Cornelius.
Yes.
Eric Butler.
Yes.
Nancy Turner.
Yes.
Justice Mills.
Yes.
Okay. And just as a reminder, make sure you use your name before you talk, so the recorder remembers that. Okay. So now we need to elect a vice chair. So if there's any nominations on that one.
I'd like to nominate Kate Cornelius as the vice chair.
Kate, are you open to that suggestion?
Yes.
Okay. Can we have a nomination?
I would like to make a nomination to have Kate Cornelius as the vice chair. This is Justice Mills.
Kristen, can you please read the roll?
Do
And
what you were going to do.
Eric Butler, second.
okay,
Thank you.
All right, we'll get there. God.
And we are also, Kim Agramson has actually joined, so we will add him to the roll call. Kate Cornelius.
Yes.
Kim Agramson.
Present.
Eric Butler.
Yes.
Nancy Turner.
Yes.
Justice Mills.
Yes.
Also on Kim, can you you said present,
Oh, Kim Agramson.
in favor or
in-
not?
Oh, in favor, yes,
Okay,
of
perfect.
the nomination, yes.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
great. Okay, we got there. So we have a new president and vice chair. Tonight we have Jerry, who is going to talk to us and is on kind of a time schedule. So we're going to move him up in the meeting.
Jerry,
So if you want to come on up to the podium and push.
You can sit right there.
You give them these things.
Yeah.
There's my card. I'll come back and get them tomorrow.
Okay,
How's that?
perfect. That works. And just make sure that you hit the red button there. So I guess you guys can pass
All right.
those around. Also, there's a pencil.
There's a button.
Push the button. There we are. All right. Hello. My name is Jerry Herman. This is amazing, this beautiful building here. I was the chairman of your Parks and Rec Committee back in 2014 or so. And when we were working on Doll Beach and other projects, and we met around a table off of Dartmouth Street in your City Hall building then. And 8 or 10 people were there. To be in a building like this is just wonderful to see this happening for your city. I'm Jerry Herman. I was the one that ran and developed the River Resource Museum down on the Oregon City banks of the Clackamas River, which was your property. We did that for 26 years with our youth and did all sorts of programming there and educational programs and city enhancement projects. We worked with Scott Tabor, you probably don't know that name, your public works director, and Jim Wynot on projects, planted over 500 plants down at Melder Bar Park. Most of the evergreens down there are now 24 years old, and that's why I have no hair. 24 years ago, we planted those things, all right? And the evergreens down there are the result of our work. We worked at Cross Park. We also worked on the initial mitigation project work at Doll Beach. The reason I'm here is I run an education and training program called Rivers of Life Center. I know I got 3 minutes and now I got 2.5 or less. We want to help your city with some projects. I have grant funding through the Oregon Youth Corps, which I've had for over 20 years. We have the longest running youth corps program in Clackamas County. Love to do some things in your city. Again, I don't know what your project needs are. Maybe your staff has some particular needs, but we worked hard at Cross Park, removing invasives, planting stuff. And then, of course, at Meldrum Bar, we did all sorts of planning and enhancement, as I mentioned to you. We also did river tours. The other thing I train these young people is to be presenters. And they're great presenters with the Portland Spirit Organization, Willamette Jet Boats. Love to talk to you maybe sometime about perhaps, since you're a Parks and Recreation Committee, recreational tour featuring your city. We do these with Oregon City and Westland already. So I wanted you to know that we're here to help. And I passed around some literature that shows you the kind of things that we used to do. And you've got a brochure, I believe, is with you, which talks about what we do. We work with 100 youth per year. A lot of them are your students or underprivileged people from your city. A lot of them are junior ROTC cadets who are my main core from Oregon City Senior High School. They're really efficient at getting things done. And our primary site we're developing, just for information, is up on Mount Scott, 35 acres we're developing right now, called the Mount Scott Headwaters Center for Built Environments, where we're creating environments with all the ponds and streams that were big problems there. We've turned them into assets. Right next to Eagles Landing Golf Course is 35 acres of environment that is kind of a showcase. Love to have you up there sometime and host you up there at that location. So that's why I'm here today. And I'm going to depart now because I have to get back to something else I'm doing tonight. But please don't hesitate to call us. The brochures have our contact information. And if there's any questions I can answer now, I'd be happy to. But if not, thanks for letting me speak.
Okay, I would open it up to the board and see if they had any questions or clarifications right now.
Thanks for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you. And we do
You
have
bet.
your contact information. Thank you so much. And then here's those. Okay, thank you, Kristen. Next on our meeting then would be the approval of the minutes from our October 14th meeting. So I'm sure that you all had a chance to read those minutes. And then remember back to what we had done back there. Were there any corrections or things that we needed to change or add to that?
I was in Hawaii, so I'll have to take your word for it.
Dare you. Okay, so do we have any objections to the minutes from that meeting? No? Can I get a motion then on approving those?
Kate Cornelius motions to approve.
How about a second?
Second
Justice
motion
Mills.
to approve.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right.
Justice Mills, second.
All right. Kristen, if you could read the roll, that would be great.
Kate Cornelius.
Yes.
Kim Agrimson,
Yes.
Eric Butler,
Yes.
Nancy Turner,
Yes.
Justice Mills.
Yes.
Okay. Next is our business from the staff.
Can I ask a
Oh.
quick follow-up question from those minutes?
Yes.
Just looking back at the memorial bench donation application, what did we end up deciding, or have we put that bench in? Do we know?
There's going to be an update.
There's an update.
There is an
of
update,
the
okay.
meeting. Yeah. I did want to step back just a real quick second and say welcome to Silas Richardson, who's the new Public Works Director. This is his first meeting with us, and also Jackie Betts from the city is here. And I appreciate you coming, Silas. I know your plate is full and running over. We'll try and add a few more things to that for you. And Jackie, thank you so much for stepping in during that interim and kind of keeping us up to date and posted on things that were happening in the parks during that time. I
You're
appreciate your
welcome.
time.
Thank you.
Okay, so business from the staff.
Thank you. So attached to the agenda is the monthly report. And it's basically just giving some updates of the day-to-day items that we do at Public Works. Within that, you'll see that most of the work that's happening right now in the parks is general maintenance related to the parks, restrooms and other cleaning that needs to happen daily, and then other winter maintenance that's happening. Next, I think I'll pass it over to Jackie to talk a little bit about a couple items, the Oregon State Parks Grant and maybe the Metro Local Share Grant related to the nature park.
Yeah, so two big projects the Parks and Recreation Board get to work on this coming year. So one is the Oregon State Parks Grant for the paved loop trail at the Gladstone Nature Park. The City Council approved that contract, and we've received the notice to proceed from the state parks. Paralleling that process, we're also hoping to do the restrooms and the picnic shelter at the Gladstone Nature Park, which is coming from a different pot of funds. It's Metro funded. We expect the City Council to consider that agreement at their March 11th meeting. Tomorrow night on the City Council agenda, under consent agenda, I'm asking them to approve a contract to allow the city to use a project manager from 3J Consulting who handles our planning and zoning services right now. John Lewis recently retired from Oregon City as their public works director, and he is interested in project managing both of these for the city so that Silas can continue to concentrate on the operational needs of the department while also being the point person for Mr. Lewis to oversee those projects. They will be meeting with John Lewis in the next couple of weeks to put together a timeline, and we could probably give you an update on the next steps with that project at your March meeting.
Jackie, could you give a quick update about the agreement between City of Gladstone and Metro's regional dumping program?
Yeah, so a couple of months ago, there was some illegal dumping that was found out at Doll Beach, and our public works employees went out and started to clean that up, which really isn't their responsibility. And in the course of that, the police chief realized that we used to have an intergovernmental agreement with Metro. They have a program where they will come and deal with illegal dumping in parks or on any city public property. So he worked with them. We got an agenda or an IGA back in front of the city council in January. That intergovernmental agreement is back in place. This will be the police chief will be the point person for this. So if any of our public works employees notice anything in our parks, they're to notify the public works director, and then he and the police chief will contact Metro to come out and do some remediation work for illegal dumping. Gratefully, we don't have a lot of that in Gladstone, but this is one instance where it was pretty bad out there. So we're glad to have this back in place. It doesn't cost anything for the city unless they need to bring in dumpsters, which the city will take care of.
Thank you. I'll continue on with the general updates. So another aspect of what parks maintenance has been doing throughout the winter is a lot of hazardous tree removal within parks. Multiple trees were recently inspected by a certified arborist, and some were deemed hazardous within several parks. Trees were taken down at Ridgegate, David M. Scott, Cross Park, Meldrum Bar, Nick Shannon, and the Gladstone Nature Park. The spray park, there's an update. Just wanted to share that all the parts for that have been ordered. We're waiting to start up to add the buckets. It's currently winterized, but it'll be functional and ready to go on opening day. There's questions about the pressure spray apparatus. That's not broken. It's a function of the water pressure in the system. And it is what it is. We'll look into it a little bit more, but for right now, some people have been asking about it, and it just has to catch up with itself. It gives a pressure relief, and then it has to catch up with itself. But it will be ready to go. We do have the parts, and we'll get it up and functioning on opening day. Update on the memorial bench donation. We've been in contact and talking with the family, and we're hoping to have the bench ordered in the next 2 weeks. So there's just been some back and forth on communication and what they want exactly for that bench.
Did we decide to approve the like exception and do the other bench?
Silas?
Yes.
As long as we're on that, are they going to take one of the benches that's currently there off of the pad and put it on one of the concrete pads? Or will this be in addition to the other benches along Ames Park?
I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think if we're starting from scratch, we'll probably just add a new bench.
Add a new bench in
Yeah,
there with concrete and it'll be concrete underneath it?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I thought the idea was that one was broken.
There is one that's broken.
Yes.
So we're swapping out the broken one
That's
Well,
what-
we're looking into replacing the broken one as well. But
anyway. Okay.
it's in flux. We can talk about it, but everybody likes benches. So if we can add another bench, I think that would be my preference. But
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
There's been some discussion lately about the many different dumpsters we have in parks. There's been some dumping that's gone on in the dumpsters. It was brought to our attention. We've added signs to the dumpsters and we currently have them locked. They are kind of a necessity for us. But it's just an update I wanted to share because it's a hot topic. It's something we're trying to manage. It's useful for the workers while they're out picking up trash because it eliminates bringing the trash back to our facility here next door. So it's just, I wanted to give you an update if anybody asks. We have put signs up and we now have them locked, and we're also looking at different alternatives, but they're used a lot. A little update on the pickleball court. There was a bit of an incident where a contractor working for PGE doing some trimming next to it basically dropped a branch on the court. It caused a little bit of not damage, but marking on the surface, and there's some hydraulic oil that dripped on the court. I was able to put a meeting together with the contractor and the pickleball court organization, for lack of a better term. I don't know their official name. I apologize, but it was a very successful meeting, and all parties agreed. We also had the contractor that did the original coating come out. All parties agreed to a course of action to correct it, and the contractor agreed to pay the bill just through a verbal quote on site. So I'm not sure if the work's been done yet, but it was something that's happened in the past couple months. So with that, that's kind of wraps up our maintenance update. Are there any questions? And I think it concludes the business.
I was reading through the work that's done, the report that Public Works puts out, and I noticed again that there's been a lot of damage, continuing to be a lot of damage in the restrooms. And I don't know, is this like an increase? Do you have any sense on whether this is an increase or it's just static and this is what always happens?
I don't have a sense of that. I can't speak to the history because I've only been here a month. I apologize, but I can get back to you on that.
Yeah. Are we having bathrooms that are open at night? I mean, I'm assuming that it's got to either be, Patterson, Meldrum and Cross Park, because those are our three big bathrooms.
To my knowledge, most of them have automatic locks on timers. The pit toilet, as it's referred to at the boat ramp, that's open all the time. But again, it's what it is, a pit toilet, basically a nice outhouse, so to speak. But all of the restrooms that have plumbing lock at night, they're on a timer, so they should be locking at night.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the damage is then happening during the daytime or?
Potentially, there could be somebody that gets in there. I mean, if it's 5 o'clock, there could be somebody like right now, dusk, that goes in and does it, or on the weekend, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. Are there any other questions or? Yeah, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All
Thank
right.
you.
So moving ahead then, we have business from the board. Our first agenda tonight for that is we continue to hear and get input from the community about possibly setting up a reservation system for the picnic areas at Max Patterson Park. Right now, what happens is that whoever gets there first kind of stakes it out for however long they want it. And there's not a lot of turnover. So some people are sending grandpa or the uncle down at 6 o'clock with their cup of coffee to stake out, 6 a.m. on busy weekends. And then the party isn't until maybe noon or 1. So it's really tying up. That's been suggested a couple times. I know it has come up before in the Parks Board Advisory meeting about that, like how would we do that? So I don't, and I know that at some point there were suggestions on what we could rent them out for, but it's never been followed through. So I would like to kind of have that discussion, like, is this something that we want to look into doing? And if it's, and kind of seeing if this is something the city can help us with, get on how people would do the reservation part and how it would be enforced.
So we've had some internal conversations with management, and I believe what we're going to try to propose is a pilot project at Max Patterson starting this summer, where we wouldn't charge because we want to get people comfortable with the notion that they have to reserve. And there's 2 shelters at Max Patterson.
Correct.
And so where it's left right now is we're researching whether we have existing software that would make it easy for staff to do those reservations, because we do reservations for soccer, softball, baseball, or whether or not there is some software that we can purchase to do that. We'd like to try that first, and then if it evolves, we could talk about Meldrum Bar, or we could talk about implementing a fee to do that. And also maybe getting it to where it's user-friendly online. So I guess what I would say is there's a willingness from management to explore this, to try to get a pilot project in place for Max Patterson beginning this summer.
Okay. All right.
I know one of the challenges we talked about with that was who would enforce it. What are you thinking on weekends? Because somebody would have to be able to.
Yeah, and the chief has made that clear. That's not a police officer
No.
priority to enforce that. And so we're having to work through that. Another conversation we're having is whether or not, we've had seasonals in the past. Can we have them working different schedule through the weekend that can have a presence out there, help with garbage pickup? So I don't have the answers of how it will be implemented, but I wanted you to know that we're having those conversations to try to give it a go. It's going to take a lot of public education, because those that are used to just coming and sitting are now going to have to understand that there's a process for reserving. So whether that's putting a kiosk out there with signage and all of that information, we just started having those conversations last week.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I know, we can publicize it like through the city newsletter and send things out like that, but people that are outside of the community aren't going to maybe necessarily get that information. So I think that might be one of the times that we might have some butting of heads, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
and enforcement is an issue because, like I said, we don't want phone calls where officers have to show up and tell somebody that you can't
Right.
be here because somebody else is there. So,
Right. And so also the seasonal, whoever it was who was working the weekend would also help with the garbage because I know some of those parties create pretty serious garbage.
That's the concern from a public works standpoint is kind of the expectation. If you reserve it, what is the state that you take it over? So if you're doing a 2-hour time slot, and then the party leaves and then I show up and it's a mess, who cleans it up? Right now, I would hope the onus is on whoever reserved it. But that would be another piece of the puzzle, so to speak.
Sarah, probably potentially there could also be a cleaning, either a deposit or a cleaning fee or something. So if you don't leave it like more or less like you found it, then there's potentially some penalties attached to that, even if it's essentially a free reservation.
Again, that's a larger conversation, I think. But as Jackie said, we're talking about it.
Okay. All right. Right, I appreciate you because I know this is kind of a recurring theme that keeps coming up every year. And it'd be nice if it was in place like before Memorial Day, at least. I'm sure parties start in April, but for sure in May. Okay. Any other questions from the board? Concerns? Okay, and if we can just kind of go on down, if we skip the middle agenda item and go down to the swing change, that also is at Max Patterson. So while we're talking about Max Patterson, we can just stay there for a minute. Earlier, like back in September, the mayor received a letter from a community member. And as well as bringing up, though, it'd be nice if we could reserve picnic shelters. She also pointed out that the play structure there is predominantly an older child play structure and that there's nothing there for toddlers. There is a handicapped formed hard plastic swing. But other than that, if a child isn't able to really like get around too much on the play structure. So she was requesting perhaps looking at adding a swing that was more friendly to toddlers. And she did send a picture. And it's one where the parent sits on one side and then the child sits on the other. Anyway, so I think so I wanted to bring that up and see if the board had any concerns about that and I'm not sure from a construction standpoint how that would align with the space. There is quite a bit of space there, but you have to have the fall zone.
That's really cute.
Well, it reminds me kind of one that we used to have when we were kids, where one person sits on one side and it's kind of like a horse swing kind of thing. It's kind of that similar thing, but they're strapped in a little bit more. Anyway, that's just one idea. So I wasn't sure if the board had any thoughts about that, if we wanted to kind of where we wanted to go with that. I think it's a valid concern. It comes down to money again. Yeah. So anybody have any thoughts or feelings or?
I mean, this is Kate. It's a great idea, but how much money did we just put into that playground and into all of that? Oh, well, no.
This isn't down at
Patterson.
Meldrum. We're
Oh.
talking Patterson.
Have we talked about like the state of that playground? I mean, that one's not that old, is it? Is there bigger work that needs to be done there? Or are we really just talking about the expense of a swing?
If I may,
Please.
I'm not sure of the age, but it's fairly new, I believe, maybe in the last 10 years. There's currently 3 swings, I believe. One is a tire swing style. The other is, as you said, Nancy, the ADA style. And then the third is just a typical swing. I think if you were to add one, you'd probably have to add a whole nother component of the swing. I did a quick research and, the cost is probably after installation a few $1,000s, I would think, if there's even room to add a swing like that. Because these I'm not an expert in play equipment, but I do know that they're designed for purpose. And there's a lot of engineering that goes into it. So it's something that we'd have to probably call the manufacturer and see if it's even potential. And then the spacing, if there's even space to place one there. But we've looked into it a little bit.
I'm pretty sure that it's older than 10 years because I think my kids were playing on it yeah. So I would give it more like 25 maybe. And that's why I'm curious how those wood posts are doing, but okay. So would the board be interested in just getting an estimate on what it might be to do that to see if it's even feasible financially or?
This is Eric. I don't think it hurts to look into it more.
Do we have anybody else who might want to weigh in on that? No? Okay. So we could get a motion or we could just ask for information. Would you like a motion on that or just?
No, I'll follow up.
Okay.
I'll look into it a little bit more and engage with the crew and see if we've got a resource for that, and we'll get some numbers.
Okay. Yeah, I know. It seems like it should be something pretty straightforward, but again, by the time you get the fall zone and all of that, it can get really complex. So safety is an issue. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. All right. So now we'll go back to the second one here with the public survey of the neighborhood park, Nick Shannon. Nick Shannon is a memorial park, and I'm sure we're all comfortable with where it's located up on Valley View Road. The park is about 6.6 acres. It sits in front of the Oak Lodge Water Reservoir site on Valley Road. So you have that reservoirs behind it. And half of the lot is treed. And then another half of it is where the play structure is. 2 of our new picnic tables and 3 of our new benches are also up there in that park currently, as well as a play structure area. One of our goals for the coming up year is to work on Nick Shannon Park because it really is outdated. I think all horrible play equipment went up to Nick Shannon, except for the slide. The slide looks pretty good, but so it is really a good time to work on that. So that was one of our goals. And Jackie, and Silas, I'd like a little bit of input. Did the council adopt Nick Shannon as a project of theirs, one of their goals?
The council has not formally adopted their goals yet. However, Nick Shannon is on their list. They agreed with the Parks and Recreation Board to make that a priority, as well as everything else that's on the Parks Board's work plan.
Is there funding that comes with that?
There will have to be because it will become an adopted city council goal. So typically what the next steps would be in the process is to go ahead and work on putting some survey questions together for the Nick Shannon Park area. Get that feedback to the Parks Board so you know where the focus needs to be so that we can get an idea of how much money to allocate in this next budget process for Nick Shannon. And I guess that, is what makes it difficult when you're weighing other asks like you just had in Max Patterson with the toddler swing. Really, the focus right now is going to be Nick Shannon. So I would suggest that that would be the next step, is that we work on creating a survey to get input. And you'll need to tell us if you would like it just to be a certain area up there where you want input or citywide input on what you would like at that park.
Okay.
And a time frame for how long you want us to collect that information.
Right. And I'm sure most of us that were on the board for the Robin Hood survey, Haley from city offices she's the one who helped create that survey, and she had a copy of it, and she sent one to Silas and I forwarded it on to the Parks Board so they would at least see how that survey looked. So I'm assuming that Haley could do an equal to that at least.
Yes, Haley would be able to do it. I know that you want to be careful how many questions you ask to get people to provide input.
Right.
I do believe that the former chair of the committee helped with the creation of the questions. So I think that's something that the Parks Board would like to advise us on.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know if the Parks Board has any feelings about that park. I think there's a couple of opportunities that park could bring to the system. And I don't know if we want to, so I kind of want to get a good feel for, number one, what you feel like your questions would be that you want to hit on to ask the people. And 2, if you want to talk about a different style of play structure up there, it would be a really nice place to have a nature one with all of those trees to kind of embrace that. There's also the water towers behind it, which would really be a pretty cool place for a real industrial looking kind of a play structure. But anyway, just kind of how we want to go about sleuthing that out as well as what questions do you want to know? So we can either kind of work on that here at the meeting. We've got lots of time, or we could have someone agree to or you guys could send questions to me and then I can work with Haley. So that would be our 2 ways to go. Yes.
This is Justice Mills. I think we should do what you're asking and come up with ideas on our own and send them to you. Just for example, my wife and I just went by there today because I saw this was on there. We go, oh, wow, look at all these new benches. But the rest of this place looks like, you know, that it needs a lot of upgrading. And then we saw monkey bars, and of course, our granddaughter loves monkey bars, so we might actually take her there tomorrow. But like, one of my questions would be right now that if we were going to think about upgrading a play structure or something like that, is how many children, I'll just call them children because they all are to me, but how many actually go there and actually utilize something like that versus people walking their dogs, and it would something like that warrant a new play structure? Not saying that it's not supposed to, but hey, if some people say, hey, nobody really lives up here in this community that has that many kids, then, you know, maybe it would be something that you could scale down on or make something a little bit different. Or that's all I got to say about that.
I know that from what I've heard, it's a pretty well-used park because it is a neighborhood and kids can go down to it. I think the biggest drawback, besides the age of the play structure itself, is the sand. It doesn't have bark under it, it has sand, and I think that becomes a very large cat box, as well as kids coming home kind of like they've been at the beach, and parents having to deal with that. So that is one area that definitely needs to be upgraded. Plus, I think safety. I'm not sure if sand is even an acceptable surface that you can have under a play structure these days. So anyway, okay, so just wanting to know. Okay,
Correct.
the community that surrounds that. Okay, other questions?
This is Kate. Not necessarily specific to the questions, but I think that a wider reach is probably important, that we're not just going with immediate neighbors. So like we did at Meldrum, putting the sign down there that people could scan. So whether they've driven in and parked to go to that park, whether they walk there, you know, whether they're there every day, I like that it is more open. But then I think also seeing if there is a neighborhood organization who would send out a link to it, but making sure, and maybe putting it in the city newsletter, but making sure that it is wider than just
That neighborhood.
that small neighborhood, because it is a park that, you know, I don't live in that neighborhood, but I go up to that park. And so, you know, maybe I have an opinion on it too. And it would just be nice to be more inclusive and get, you know, the more feedback, the better the survey we can action on the results.
Is the city able to, this is Nancy Turner, is the city able to access addresses in a surrounding area around that park? Like if we identified,
Yeah,
streets.
we could do like you could do a 300-foot radius. We do for public hearings for land use planning. We would do a bigger radius if you wanted to. QR codes are very popular right now. And if you had a flyer in all of our parks with the QR codes, then people could just scan it and participate that way as well. So if you tell us you want to kind of go broader in the community, then we can target to do that.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other questions or concerns or moving forward?
This is Justice Mills again. So that park up there does have a QR code, but I didn't check it today to see what it attached to. Is,
I think it just attaches to the city regulations concerning
Okay.
parks. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of your questions could be around the sand. Do you
Yeah.
want the sand gone? Do
Sure.
you like the sand? Do you want to move it to High Rocks and move the boulders out of High Rocks and have a sandy beach down? You know, you could go as broad as you'd like.
Right. I know we could get really lost in the weeds. We're good at that. So, I would like to, come to an agreement. I don't know if we need to really make a resolution at this part, but but if we could have an agreement. So if you would all, I'm looking at the Robin Hood survey, just kind of that outline, that structure. And sending questions to me, and then I can check with Haley, and then maybe by the next Parks Board meeting, we'll have a sample that we can all rip that apart and try again. So does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, I think that would be great if we came back at the March 10th meeting with a draft survey.
Right.
And then we could launch that, and we'd just be starting the budget process through May and June. So the timing is good.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay. Thank you. I also wanted to kind of mention that this is a memorial park. And It was named after a young man who was a resident in Gladstone and died very early. So I'm curious, I don't know if his family still continues to live in the area, but I really would like to be mindful of that component of this park as we move forward. And just because I think emotions can be attached. I know he died of a asthma attack and they did a celebration there yearly for several years, kind of working to get information out on asthma, but just kind of being really aware of that and looking to see if maybe we can track down family or be open to that. Just so we don't.
Yeah, our city recorder's been here 39 years, so I will tap into her historical knowledge and
I figure.
see.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember when it happened, but I don't remember a lot of the details, but I do think we need to be really aware of that and try and accommodate that component into the park too. So, all right. At this point, any other questions from the board? Issues they want to bring up?
I have one thing for Jackie,
Mhm.
about the, just from your email and from trying to sift through the packet for tomorrow night's meeting
Mhm.
about the library property. That's coming up because theoretically in some other universe, that could be a park,
Correct.
but that has never been a park. The plan has never been for it to be a park, but because the word park is in there, that's why it's going to council and they're deciding on whether it can be leased, sold, etc.
That is correct.
But there's no history of that actually ever having been park or
It's-
considered a park.
It's zoned
Okay.
community commercial, and one of the allowed uses is a park. And because of our charter restrictions that say before the city can sell or lease any property that could be designated as
As a
park,
park.
that we have to refer it to the ballot. So you are correct. The council's not deciding tomorrow night what to actually do with the property, just whether or not they want to refer it to the ballot to at least have that restriction removed.
Thank
Well,
you. That's what
So
I
it could
thought.
be removed or kept. I mean, that restriction.
Yeah, if they decide not to refer it to the May ballot, then basically that means that the city's going to retain ownership and maybe do a community outreach process to figure out what they want to do with the building. And then at a later date, whether it's November 2025 or May 2026, then it would have to be referred to the voters if they wanted to sell or lease it.
Okay. Has there been a determination on whether that building is safe?
We're working through that right now, and I should be able to provide some updates to council tomorrow night. I mean, it's no surprise there are elements of asbestos and lead in that building, but to the point where it has to be condemned, probably not. So would a potential developer want to come in and do something with it? That's a possibility, but we are working to have the structural integrity assessed of the building as well as the environmental hazards of it.
Okay, great.
I wouldn't want to work in it, but yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Business from the audience? Kristen, do we have any online or anything?
Jerry was the only one that we had that contacted us, and I haven't received any other
Okay. great.
forms
Okay.
requesting.
I did want to make one observation and I just, as a thank you, and I've noticed around town as I'm walking, and I think it's important that we tell you good things that we're seeing. I'm seeing lots of maintenance with trees and buildings and all of that being done. Things are looking really good at this time of the year. It's hard to look good at this time of the year, but the parks are looking really good. I know Scott's been working on a big project down at Cross Park, getting some blackberries out, not a fun job. So, and I've noticed that some of the plantings from the watershed are looking good. They're still in the ground. It's a good thing. So, I've noticed that. I don't know if other people in their walks around town have noticed things that they want to just let everybody know about. Now,
Yes, thank you, blackberries, because that I run past there and it's always like trying to grab. So when I saw in your update that that was happening, I was very excited. And I'm like, bet Scott's doing some work for us. Thank you.
all right. So our next meeting is March 10th. Put that on your calendars. And if I have a motion to adjourn,
I'll take this one. Motion to adjourn. Kim Agrimson.
A second?
Justice Mills, seconds.
Okay, Kristen, if you'd call the roll?
Kate Cornelius,
Yes.
Kim Agrimson,
Yes.
Eric Butler,
Yes.
Nancy Turner,
Yes.
Justice Mills.
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned.